Welcome to this special Week 7 edition of the Sports Cube podcast. And here's our special guest for the show. We've been kind of hinting at it a couple weeks. And it's Eagles content manager and on-air talent, Chris McPherson. He's been a great family friend of mine for, since like 2011, long, a lot of years now. And so, Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's an honor, really.
Oh, please. No, I was glad to be on. Glad to see that you're doing so much. And one of the big messages I would say, for someone who's in like your situation, Kyler or Eli or Branton, you guys are getting that experience early on. I mean, that's such a huge, huge difference. Kyler, I got to hear you on the radio doing the high school broadcast a couple weeks ago, doing the color commentary. And it's just crazy to think that so young in your college career, you're getting that type of experience. So it's, that's the biggest thing I could tell anyone out there who's, aspiring to get into the business is just try to get that experience any way possible. There are so many avenues nowadays that it's great that you guys are doing this to kind of cut your teeth. And so that if you get an opportunity to do something with like a major media market or a team or something along those lines, it's not your first go around doing it. So glad to be on with you guys this afternoon. And I'm waiting for Branton to bring up what happened a couple weeks ago when the Eagles were at Heinz Field.
Oh,
so
yes.
I'm sure it's coming up at some point here in the podcast.
So first, kind of my set, basically like my first question, so to speak, is what exactly is your job and the responsibilities of your job, pretty much?
Wow, it's a great question, Kyler. I would say that's evolved over the years, and I think there's times where I'll be out with my wife, and you'll meet another couple, and that conversation will come up. What do you do for a living? And there's times where I think my wife doesn't like the answer I give. Just because there's a lot of all-encompassing aspects to it. I would say the most simplistic form would be a storyteller, and that's why I got into this in the first place. Growing up, huge sports fan, grew up in North Jersey. Knew from high school days that, look, I wasn't a good enough athlete that I was going to make it in the pros, but Sports Center was like new. And back then this is like, wow, I can get all like the scores and highlights in one program. And like, I was just consuming it day in and day out. Like most sports fans. And I think that's why I figure between that and a love for writing, something that came natural to me, I figured that's the best way to combine the two. And, I think when I first got into working with the Eagles, it was, you're nuts and bolts. You're like a beat reporter, writing features about the team, interviewing players and coaches, doing your typical stories. But with social media, the job has just evolved where, you're offering, it's evolved where you've got to be not just a storyteller, but you also have to be an analyst at times. You're looked to provide inside information. You got to be an expert at the field. You got to be able to provide that quick hitting commentary on social media, but also can you deliver stories, whether it's an article, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a video feature. So I think what's great about the job is there's no 2 days that are going to be the same. You might say, all right, I'm going to write about Carson Wentz's performance against the Cowboys and what the Eagles need to do better on offense. Kind of walked into that one there, but what the Eagles need to do better in the second half of the season. But if the Eagles make a roster move, if the Eagles make a trade, if there's a big injury, there's always some kind of breaking news that's going to kind of change the course of where you go throughout the day. So what I oversee is, managing content. Well, what does that really mean? Basically, if you go to PhiladelphiaEagles.com, if you download the Eagles app, I'm responsible for pretty much what you see on that page. I help contribute from a writing standpoint, a podcasting standpoint as well. We have a magazine, Game Day Magazine, that I'm the editor for and provide a lot of the content for and oversee the production of it. So it's an interesting position because it's not just working with football. You're working with marketing on their messaging for different things. You're working with corporate sales on different sales activations. You're working with community relations for, different kinds of community initiatives that are going on. The voting initiative was really huge for the Philadelphia Eagles. So you get your hands in so many different things, and there's so many different areas where you can cover. So it's not just covering the football team and what happens on the field. There's so many off the field aspects to the job as well on a daily basis.
Yeah. And honestly, it was kind of crazy how me and Chris and our family kind of connected. It was actually by accident. It was through a random drawing that my dad didn't realize he even entered. And lo and behold, we get connected, been a great guy to our family and, vice versa. And, to my family for years. I mean, not even just the football aspect or the, business side, but, off the field, talking with Chris. Me and Chris actually met up in India a couple years back. Want to meet up soon, by the way.
Sure, it's been a long time. I think that's, you bring up a great point there. I think working for the team, you're also kind of an ambassador of the team as well. And, fans don't necessarily get to touch and talk and interact with the players on a daily basis. But, myself, Dave Spadero, who's been my mentor and has guided me through my career for so many years.
Dave's a great dude.
We're the people who, if we're angry about the team, we're the ones who get yelled at and things of that nature. Now you go back to what's changed over the years. Social media has changed. Certainly players are more available. They will put their voices out there, where it used to be whatever I wrote or whatever, like the TV stations put out there, that's what you heard from the players. Whereas now the players can control their own messaging a lot more. But I think that's another aspect of it. And one of the fun parts of over the years is just getting to meet people like yourself, Kyler, and just knowing that there's Eagles fans all over the country, all over the world. And it's a passion that so many people share. And, whenever you meet someone who's an Eagles fan, they have these stories about how they became a fan, their first memories of watching the team. And, it's just great to meet so many different people over the years. And, instantly it's like that special connection that you have with someone.
Yeah, and really quick, this is like my last tidbit before I turn it over to Eli and Branton. But because me and you could talk on and on for hours, it seems like. But I think my all-time favorite interview not really interview, but article that you wrote was the Jalen Mills one you did a couple years back about a story. Obviously, Jalen Mills he's up there with Carson as like my favorite Eagles player right now playing, just because I played cornerback in high school and et cetera. So he was a huge role model for me as far as like playing and just his overall swagger he brought, just that flex on, type deal. I'm going to show you what's up. But one of my, like I said, and I think it was on actually the Game Day magazine, but my favorite article that you wrote, Chris, was definitely the Jalen Mills one a couple years back. I mean, phenomenal article for sure.
I appreciate that. And Jalen has actually been really, really great to work with over the years. There's some players who are naturally comfortable. It's that confidence, it's that swagger that they don't mind being in front of the camera. They don't mind being involved with the media, but he takes it to another level where he will work with our social media team. It's Julia Pekanskas, who is our social media manager. She has a great relationship with a lot of the players. It's like as soon as they see her on the practice field, it's like they know it's like, all right, she's doing something for the gram or something like that. We got to like show out for her. Or Kyle Laguerre, who's our outstanding photographer. It's like they see him and it's like, all right, this is going to be on my social media page. Like they know what that these guys can help us out. So as we ask a lot of the players, and actually the one story with Jalen I enjoyed, I'd probably say doing more than the article that you're referring to from a few years back, was he did a first-person perspective of his comeback from a foot injury. And he just detailed the emotional roller coaster, the highs and lows, the small steps toward coming back, the first time he could put his sneakers on and dance, the ability to, when he first found out he was going to be able to play and he was going back to his hometown of Dallas for his first game back in about a calendar year, and what it was like to play in that game. And he was just so very open and authentic and genuine and just poured himself out, and allowing me to be able to work with him on writing that piece, sort of like a Players Tribune style piece. And that, it's when you have athletes, players who are that open, it just makes the story so much better. Because the football stuff is great. The football stuff, it's, when guys are excelling and you have guys like Travis Fulgham, who's having a breakout year for
Fulgham jersey, Eagles, baby.
It's like, well, everyone probably has a 13 from Aguilar, so it's just kind of like
Nelson Aguilar does not need to be brought up.
Just changing the name on the back, but when you find out where they came from, the backstories, that just adds so much more to it. Because after a while, it's like, all right, how'd you make that play? Well, I ran down the field and caught the ball. It's like, there's always the different layers to it, and a good writer, a good storyteller is going to be able to uncover all those layers. And the challenge, though, especially in a media market like Philadelphia, is, and especially with the circumstances now with COVID-19, it's, typically it used to be all the reporters would go in the locker room, and Philly has even bigger than New York, bigger than the Giants, the Jets, the New York teams. Philly has the biggest media marketing contingent, and you go in the locker room and it's like, all right, what am I going to do that's different? And this is another little tidbit. If you want to put like red flags or like sirens throughout the course of this interview for, different lessons that like young journalists or people who want to get into business want to pick up, what can you do that's different? Because you'll see someone talk and you'll see like 20 reporters go and we all get the same quotes. And then it's like, well, if we all have the same quotes, think of it like a chef. If we all have the same ingredients, we're all going to be making the same dish. What am I going to do that's going to add a little different spice to it? And it's really challenging this year because we get these Zoom calls with like 5 or 6 players at most a day. Post game, it's 5 or 6 players, and it's like the captains. It's Carson, it's Jalen Mills, usually Rodney McLeod, Brandon Graham, all great guys, but we all have the same stuff to work with. Whereas before, you could go in the locker room and maybe Jason Kelsey is sitting by himself at his locker when everyone else leaves, and he can give you that little bit about that play call that made a difference in the game. Or you can describe the scene of Boston Scott has the game-winning catch, and it's like all the players are razzing and giving him a hard time and talking about what he's meant. Seeing him be able to come up. It's those little stories that fans as a whole are missing out on, and it's going to be interesting to see the future of sports coverage because will media be let back into locker rooms? And I'm sure teams are like, well, we just did it this year without it. Why do we need them back in? But those are the types of stories that fans are missing out on. And ultimately, the media is trying to, tell the story to get more fans engaged, which will grow viewership and bring in bigger numbers for the league. So it's that kind of relationship that, everyone kind of needs to be able to win.
Yeah. So Brandon or Eli, I don't know who wants to go first. Man, you might as well have your questions lined up.
Depends. Does he want to hear the Steelers question first or last?
You can get out of the way. You can get out of the way. So it was it's Chase Claypool. Interesting story about Claypool. I'll admit this. I'm a Notre Dame fan. I've watched Claypool play over the years, and thought he was. I actually was intrigued when he came out because I was like, it's not a great tight end class. He kind of has that. He's that thicker build of a bigger receiver.
Well, real quick. So on top of this, Chris also does great draft coverage too. Him and Fran Duff are literally, it seems like, everywhere doing draft coverage. So my bad.
It's all good. Fran is by far. Look, he lives it. He eats it. He breathes it. Like he's the one for draft stuff. Okay, I kind of like pick up. I tag. I'm the tag along. Like once we get into like draft season and like it's like all the events like Combine, Senior Bowl, I'll jump on board. But he's doing it. He's watching tape all throughout the year. But to get back to Claypool, I was kind of wondering, like, why is he not going to be a receiver? Why is he not going to be a tight end? It's not a great tight end class. He might have bigger value. He's kind of that possession guy for Notre Dame. But then I got to talk to him at the Senior Bowl. Very, very impressive young man. And I'm sure you've seen the videos of him on social media. I think he sent the Steelers fan who was suffering from, I want to say Alzheimer's, dementia, was having memory loss. So he sent him a jersey. Like, I'm like, you kind of get the sense that's the kind of guy he is. So a tremendous story. But, for all the guys, all the weapons that the Steelers have, it's kind of like it's a pick your poison type situation. Who's going to beat you? And on that day, it was Claypool. They just couldn't get the stop they needed. And they offensively, the Eagles just started so slow that it's like, all right, well, they picked things up. Fulgham was having a monster game. Everything was being caught, but they just couldn't get anything going early enough. And they dug themselves such a big hole, which has been kind of the bugaboo for the team throughout the course of most of the season. So.
Nate Gary.
That's
all I'm gonna say.
It's play call. It's
a
lot of factors went into it, but obviously that's the one play everyone points out. But Claypool just had a monster day. Slay didn't have that was probably his worst game as an Eagle.
I agree.
He's been, I would say, probably one of the MVPs of this team through the first 8 games. So. But Steelers are undefeated. They're going to be right there in the mix. Come playoff time. They have a very good chance to run back. They obviously need Big Ben, and that's been the big key for them is getting him back. So.
Right, and you just mentioned the playoffs. I was watching Tomlin's press conference yesterday. Apparently, the NFL sent out a memo about possibly adding an 8th playoff team on top of the 7th. Over the 7th.
So this would be. So I've kind of glanced. I don't know a lot of the details, but I think this is like if we start having uneven schedules, and because of COVID, the Niners, there's all this stuff, as we're recording this on Wednesday afternoon, The Niners had to shut down their facility because of a positive test, and they're supposed to play
Crazy.
tomorrow night against Green Bay. If if for whatever reason one team has 14 games, one team has 16, another has 15, I think that's how they're trying to balance it out with the 16 team. So that's like a last case emergency. But earlier when they had to move stuff around with Tennessee, you've got bye weeks to play with. You can manage that type of stuff. There were more openings in the schedule. The later we progress here in the year, you're not going to have those options at hand unless you're going to start pushing back, the playoffs and the start of the playoffs, which I think everything is at play at this point, Branton. It's just a matter of you're hoping that the team stays safe. For example, a lot of people are talking in Philadelphia, today head coach Doug Pearson had the players in for meetings and such.
Yep.
And it's like, well, it's a bye week. Why do they have them in? It's because the players can't, you get the chance to get better, but typically you want the bye week to get away. You give your players that time off. And in most times, especially coming off back-to-back wins in the here's here's like your reward, but nonetheless, players can't go anywhere. Players can't go back, can't go back to California, Florida for home visits or anything. You got to stay in the city. So, idle hands, what the devil will do with those. So it's kind of like one of those situations there. Better just bring them in, give them some work, and then they by league CBA rules, they have to have Thursday through Sunday off. So they'll be off the rest of the week.
Right.
My bad, Brandon. You go ahead. That's my fault.
Okay. Going on to the next question. Then I was going to ask, how did the beginning of quarantine, how did that affect your position? Because you lost OTAs, lost training camp. So what did you do to fill in the gaps to keep the information flowing?
Great, Brandon. Great question. What's interesting is I think most people will say their job slowed down. It came to a standstill. They learned to bake. They watched Netflix. They did all that type of stuff. They played video games nonstop. They picked up all these hobbies. It wasn't the case for us from a content production standpoint because we were the one avenue that could still do stuff, essentially. Unfortunately, however you want to say it, it was right when free agency was going to start. So basically, I came back from the combine in Indianapolis. This was like very, very beginning of March. March 13th was the day that the Eagles closed the offices. But we go right from combine to the start of free agency. So we're already kind of amping up for that as it is. And you're getting the pre-free agency signings of guys like Jalen Mills coming back on their contracts. But free agency goes through March.
Jenkins leaving. That's a huge
Jenkins leaving. Yeah. Then you get your draft ramp up in April to the end of April. So that's draft. All right, now all of a sudden it's like May, so you're kind of like, all right, well, we know that training camp is going to be hopefully going to be on the horizon. It was all uncertain at that point. But what they did with us was they kind of shifted our roles to an extent where it said, all right, well, we're typically, all right, I'd be covering OTAs and those spring practices. You'd be having the press conferences. All right, well, we all became, basically they grouped us into pods and said, all right, you guys are going to be responsible for come up with 5 content ideas, and it could be stories, videos, whatever you want to come up with. Just come up with ideas and let's start willing them down. And so everyone will have different projects that they'll work on. So typically I wouldn't work with the video team, maybe on certain things. You're more hands-on helping them out with stuff. So that's the thing is I tell people we were probably busier during the pandemic and the quarantine than I would say in a normal year, because typically you would have your events that you would cover. And then it's like, okay, I'm responsible for the team yearbook. That's taken my time during June and July. This is my 17th season. So, pretty much everything is kind of turnkey at this point, where this year it's okay. We're adding different things into the mix, and, players are at home. They don't have anything really to do either. They have their workouts and stuff in their virtual meetings, but you're reaching out to guys. We had Jake Elliott he's a big golfer. Just do trick shots around your house, or you're asking guys, what's your workout routine? Send us pictures of you with your dogs. Just all that type of content. And that's what it was. It's whatever guys are doing at home. We're trying to simulcast that. It's almost like what they're putting on their social media, we're trying to amplify or do more with it. So that's really how things changed for us. It was still very busy because the NFL has become a year-round content producing machine. so in a normal year where you're thinking to yourself, man, what are we going to be covering in May? Well, it's like, okay, it's the spring practices, it's OTAs, it's which guys are coming back in new positions, and how are the rookies starting to fit in. And those storylines might have changed, but there was just different content that we were replacing it with. So, and then really July, you're just kind of like, are we going to have training camp? And if we do, when's it start? Is there going to be a pre-season? It's those little things. So there's been, we've adjusted to some of the changes throughout time where it's like, again, the biggest thing is access to players on a daily basis. That's been by far the biggest challenge, the biggest difference. But you adjust. You just got to adjust and make do with what you got. But I think from our standpoint, the pandemic, the quarantine time was a busier time because we usually would have concerts at the stadium. We would have the NCAA lacrosse championships. We weren't having that this year, so we had others. We had to fill up the time with other things.
Okay, so part 2, pretty much. But but I'm ready to roll again if you guys are. So.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, you got it.
Eli, I know you got some questions for Chris. I heard a couple of them before, and they're really good, just like Branton. So hit him with it, Eli.
All right, thanks, Kyler. I appreciate it.
Oh,
so,
boy.
Chris, pretty well. Earlier, you mentioned markets such as Philadelphia, obviously, because that's where you work, and New York. But I was wondering, do you guys communicate like other content managers? Do you guys like interleague communication? Is that really a big thing?
So great question. Yes, we do. I'll start with the local level. I would say I won't say it's a regret, but one of the things I wish I had done a better job with earlier in my career was building a relationship with the other teams in the city. Kyler's been down there in the stadium area. You have all the major sports teams basically right there in one area. So a couple of the guys from the Sixers, I've known for a long time, but like I couldn't tell you like who my counterpart is at the Phillies, or even the person who used to know the Sixers people pretty well, but they've kind of changed out over the last couple of years. So I know the social media team, they're a lot closer. They have like group chats and things like that with the other sports teams, and we'll collaborate on different things where it's like a lot of times it'll be like, hey, the Sixers are about to start the playoffs,
I've seen that.
You'll see a lot of that stuff where it's like, a team's about to start the season, like, or like New Year's, we'll all put out the same video or highlight or photo or something like that. Now, from an NFL standpoint, what's interesting is it's been a while now. It's been quite a few years now, but it used to be when I first started that every team kind of operated like on an island when it came to content management. So it was like, look, if the Eagles want to invest in a website, in a broadcast department and all that stuff, have at it. But that doesn't mean, the Giants or the team in Washington or anyone else has to. The league changed that. And the Eagles, we were at the forefront because I think the organization, from the owner, Jeffrey Lurie, to Joe Banner, who used to be the team president, truly believed in it as a marketing vehicle. Well, I would probably say it's around 2010 now. The NFL was like, let's bring everyone together, and we all use the same content management system, the back end system. So when you see all the team sites side by side, you're going to be like, they're basically all the same. There's a lot of similarities to them. And that's because the league, did that a bunch of years ago to help offset the cost. So one team's not paying X amount for running this, and another team is not doing it. And it was just basically was something that made it easier for everyone to come together. So I definitely have relationships with guys on certain teams. There have been people who have been in my role for as long as I've been, in my spot, and even longer with other teams. So and usually like the combine is kind of like the chance where you get to see everyone and catch up with everyone. So it certainly helps because, there's times where, if we're playing the Giants in 2 weeks, it's like, hey, I can reach out to my contact in New York to be like, hey, can we get you on our podcast to preview things from the Giants' perspective? What's new with them? And this is a key facet, no matter if you're going into the sports industry, if you're going into business, it's just building relationships and having those that you can count upon. And there's turnover in the industry. If something were to ever happen, you could easily say, reach out, to your counterparts, other teams, just to say, hey, we've known each other for a long time. The work we do. If something comes up, keep me in mind, type of deal. So I would say I wish, and it's just people's schedules are hectic all the time. You wish there was more time to kind of bond and get to know what everyone else is going through, because the structures of each team are different. It's like some teams are really bound to what their PR staffs might allow them to do. Some teams, like the Cowboys, have free reign. They can criticize and say what they want. They'll do
of course.
over the weekend they do like the staff writers do their predictions, and they all said the Eagles are going to win, and I'm like, that's why we would never do that, because even if we were to think it, or we would never put that out there and be like, yeah, we all think we're actually going to lose this one.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. You're just if you think that if you think that the team that you're working for is going to lose, then why on the road would you even say that? You know what I mean?
It's the thing that I will say is, if you're an outside fan, it might legitimize it more, because if you come to PhiladelphiaEagles.com, look, I think we do a good job of towing the line where we'll be critical. We'll point out the mistakes. Like you mentioned, Fran Duffy with his draft coverage. He breaks down the coaches tape and does a column after every game. And over time, when it's 2017 and we're 11-2 and we're flying high, you can obviously you can have all the good times you want. You don't have to harp on the negatives. It doesn't matter. But when you're 3-4-1 and you have a win, but not the prettiest win over the Dallas Cowboys, certainly, you guys say, all right, well, here's the things that are good, but here's the things that they can improve upon. And just from being at the organization as long as I have, you kind of learn those ins and outs of where to kind of to toe the line. It's kind of like, if you can back it up with facts, great. You just don't want to be that hot take columnist that's like, Doug Peterson should have benched Carson Wentz. Well, why? If you want to say that, that's one thing, but it's like, what are your reasons? What's your
what's the point behind it?
Yeah, exactly. So if you could back up, if the coach, I think it was after the Steelers game. I think it was Jim Schwartz was like, I had a bad, or no, I was thinking back. It was after the Rams game, because that was the one game where we were.
The Rams game was bad too.
That's where Jim Schwartz said it's on me. Terrible game plan. Didn't play in the right way. This is on me. If he says it, you can run with it. Yep. And the kind of like when the coaches give their press conferences, that's kind of where you're looking for the themes of how it's almost like that's how they're going to talk to the team. And that's sort of like you're kind of taking that as like, this is what you want to communicate to the fans. So I know that kind of went off what your original question was, Eli, but yes. So, but certainly, like, a lot of Eagles fans might be like, well, did you talk to the Cowboys guys? Those guys have been there, I think, as long or longer than I've been. So I'm not like super close with them, but I certainly do know all those guys. Like, it's you're kind of talking shop about, the different things that you have to deal with, covering your teams, dealing with, internal departments and things of that nature.
So this is kind of it's kind of two questions in one type deal, but it kind of ties together a little bit. Okay. So I know that we've talked about this before, but I know Branton and Eli do not know. But my first question, and like I said, I'll kind of tie this together. But it was, what was it like when the Eagles actually won the Super Bowl in 2017? And then also, what is your favorite part about your job?
Let's see.
I know it's kind of like longer questions, but I try to tie it kind of.
No. Let's see, the favorite part about the job. I think one of the aspects I enjoy the most is telling the guys stories and, being able to uncover the thing that's, I kind of alluded to this earlier with, I think, your question, Branton, when it's just more than the stat lines, when you're getting into, anyone can look at the stat sheet and say, okay, well, Miles Sanders ran for 100 yards, but when you find out, and this is not true, but I'm just going to like say as an example, like, you find out he lost a grandparent and dedicated the game, there's more to it than just what they're doing on the field. And it's being able to tell those stories. And I think what's been one of the toughest aspects of COVID, covering the team is COVID, it's harder to get those stories. So like a recent one I did was Elijah Riley, who played at Army. He's been on the practice squad. He's gotten called up for a couple of games. It's the Eagles have the salute. The NFL has a salute to service initiative. It was our salute to service game against the Cowboys on Sunday night. So I did a feature on both he and Brett Toth, who also played at Army. Just the uniqueness of having two players from a service academy playing in the NFL, playing for the same team, and
And they're not like well known either names. Like I knew who Toth was, but I didn't know who Elijah Riley was.
No, and most people, most people
don't.
He played a couple snaps on special teams. I think he got in a little bit on defense. But the thing that stood out from that interview was when I asked him what's like his best lesson about leadership, or what's the best thing he's learned about leadership from going to Army, and he mentioned love. And you kind of like, you hear that, and you're like, some people in some circles might talk about the importance of love in fostering relationships and bringing the best out of people. But to hear from someone who's coming from a military service academy, I thought was very unique and very different. And it's those types of moments. Now, the Super Bowl night was one of the best nights of my life.
Same. I can completely agree.
It was great. Personally, my dad had passed away a couple months prior to. He passed away just after Thanksgiving of that year. So it was bittersweet that he wasn't able to be there, because I worked for the team in 2004 when we went to the Super Bowl and Jacksonville and lost, but he wasn't able to make the game back then. When we got off to the hot start in October, we said we joked that like it's meant to be this year because it's in Minneapolis, which is a city that he has to go through often for work. He worked as an emergency room physician at a Native American hospital in North Dakota. So usually he would have to, there's not a lot of direct flights to Minot, North Dakota. So he would usually have to cut through a big hub city like Minneapolis. So he's flown in there many times. And we're like, the Super Bowl is in Minneapolis. It's going to be a cold weather spot. Like this is the year the Eagles go. It's not when it's in, San Diego or Tampa or like a warm weather city. But unfortunately, he passed away from a heart attack about a month after that. So, so being able to, be on the field when the team won was exhilarating. To the post-game party, sharing it with my wife, with my kids, with my mom, with my in-laws. Like we had like just so many people who have been so integral to helping me get to where I am.
Yeah.
So being able to share that moment was truly extra special. And it's tough because you think about working for a team that's like not a guaranteed thing. There's people who worked in an organization. I'll mention Leo Carlin, who was a longtime ticket manager who worked for the team for 50 plus years, but he retired before. He came on. He was there for the 60 NFL championship season with Chuck Bednarik, and but waits all these years. He waits all these years to get to a Super Bowl, and it's not guaranteed. And there's people who were hired like 2 months before and got to go and think that that's what it's like every year. It's like, and I would even say that's kind of what I thought in 2004, because that was coming off like it was the peak of Donovan's career. It was T.O. They were building up to get
broken leg T.O.
Like you thought, oh, well, we don't win this year, we'll be back next year. And it's not another, however many years before they get back there. So that's one of the differences from when you cover a team for like the Philadelphia Inquirer or Philly.com or a media outlet. You might get to go to more of those events. You might get to go cover the Super Bowl every year, but you're not going to be on the inside like you are with working for a team. And it's a unique perspective, and very, very lucky that I got to be a part of it. So, but
obviously, I think you've seen the video of me and Dad. I mean, so dude, there's, because I'm gonna be honest with you, and me and Dad always talk about this. We didn't know if we were gonna see it in our lifetime. I mean, we had no clue, and the fact that it even came out of nowhere. I mean, if you remember in 2016, the Eagles were 7-9. There ain't no way nobody would have predicted we would have been Super Bowl champions.
No.
Injuries and stuff like that. So that whole year, I mean, I literally remember that whole year just thinking we're not losing. Like, just somehow, I was so confident that we were not losing. And man, just, I can tell you the whole thing that I went through that whole Super Bowl day. I can tell you what I ate. It was at my house. I'm serious, Chris. I can tell
Yeah.
we had meatballs and like barbecue. Like I can tell you what I ate, what happened after. I remember funny story with me with that. My mom promised me, she said, if the Eagles win the Super Bowl, you don't have to go to school the next day. So I didn't go to school the next day, but then that whole week I got sick with the flu. So I literally remember falling asleep through a little bit of the Eagles Super Bowl parade and then waking up to the player speeches and Jason Kelsey and stuff like that. But so yeah, I mean, whenever it was more family for me because you know my dad and very well, and you know us, and that I mean, Dad was seeing this, since he was like 8 or 9 years old. Whenever he first became a fan, then he passed it on down to me, and it's just been a great father-son bond that we've had for probably our whole lives. So to see that, it was just like you said, it's I especially for Eagles fans, I don't think it's anything like any other. I mean, as passionate as we are, we might get crazy as fans, you can call it, but we're just passionate. But
I think that the thing also is it was the first time.
Yes.
Like Branton, I don't know if you've been a Steelers fan your whole life and you win several Super Bowls. It's even with like the Patriots, it's like been there, done
normal,
that. It's normal. And even, you hear the stories from an organization standpoint where the Jeffrey Lurie was gracious enough that every full-time member of the organization, even some beyond that, received the legit Super Bowl.
John Dornbos, good example.
And people I mentioned Leo Carlin, who was a longtime ticket manager. He got one just because it's like, we know that you dedicated pretty much your life to this team, even though you maybe weren't here for this year. We're not here as an organization without you, those types of things. But I know people who work for the Patriots that it's like, well, after the second Super Bowl, it's like the staff outside of football operations got like a Super Bowl, like a paperweight or something like that. Like it's like it kind of like you don't feel
it's
like
dumbed
you're part of
down.
it.
Yeah.
It's dumbed down. So, and the thing is, if the Eagles are ever fortunate enough to go back and win again, it's not going to be the first time. Like you got to be there and experience the first time that it happened. But the thing that you quickly learn is when fans say, I will give up, the Eagles being good for 10 years for one Super Bowl. It's never true.
Yeah.
It's never true.
Yeah.
So they boo them at halftime of the of the opening game. So
Yep. I mean, hey, we don't care, man. We don't. If you ain't playing, we'll let you
no,
know.
that was like the joke though. That it's like, oh, I've waited my whole life. The Eagles can be bad for 10 years. Just give me a Super Bowl, and it's the first half of the next game against Atlanta, the season opener, and it's like you're hearing the boober. It's like, that's how Philly is. That's how Philly is. So,
man, it's the fact that I'm gonna be honest with you. Whenever I reached out to you, and I was honestly kind of shooting my shot. I'm not gonna lie, because I don't know how your schedule is, stuff like that, especially in the season itself. And whenever we're kind of chit chatting about it, I was like, man, hopefully, because for us, back here in the studio at the college, we only have till Thanksgiving, and then from there it's remote for us. So
okay.
I was hoping, maybe that window, and then you said it perfectly whenever we were talking about it. Like, yeah, it's the bye week. That's perfect. And it's just crazy how we got this set up. But I'm good if the guys are good.
Eli still has a couple questions.
Okay, roll with it.
I was gonna ask him other questions, but I really just, it came to mind as you're a member of the Eagles organization. I just got to ask, back in 2018. For the Bears-Eagles playoff game. Were you there?
I was not. So what I did that time was I was hosting our pre and post game shows in our studios back at the team training facility. And
I love watching those.
And so it's where you're watching on like a little TV, because basically me and Ike Reese, who's a former player who does a show with us now, we're in the studio, and it's like we're watching on like something the size of this like laptop here, like, and you're like, when we first saw it, because it's basically the game ends, we go on the air, we didn't know that it was a double doink. We just saw that he missed it, and we were going crazy, and that whole thing. So but it's with that, you bring up a great point just mentioning that, because Bears should have won that game. Okay, I think let's be honest. The Bears should have won that game, and it just changes your legacy. It changes the narrative on, that means Mitchell Trubisky gets them to a divisional round playoff game, and who knows what they do with that defense, and it's like all of a sudden maybe you're talking about him differently over like one game.
Sure,
it's Nick Foles will forever be a hero because of that Super Bowl performance. Okay,
Amen.
It's crazy how but you think about the Eagles Super Bowl playoff run. If Julio Jones catches the fourth down pass in the divisional round game,
yep,
it's over. And who knows? Like it's such a small difference between winning and losing. That's why it's even like going into the game on Sunday night against the Cowboys. Many people thought the Eagles are going to romp, but it's like it's just not
you never
like
know.
that.
yeah.
You never know. It's Carson Wentz fumbles the ball in the opening drive, and then
Oh man, I'm at the vomit.
If Brandon Graham doesn't get the strip sack and they go up 6 or 10-0, who knows what happens in the game?
If Gostkowski misses, that whatever it was, however long that field goal was before the half, if he misses, what happens? It's so many what if scenarios, and I think the easiest, biggest what if scenario is always, what if, for me, especially during the Super Bowl run, it was what if the Saints don't choke there against Stephon Diggs,
Yeah.
I mean,
that was a whole other thing. So, we're going to actually deal with some breaking news here, which I'm sure I'll have to deal with shortly. But
awesome.
Josh McCown is being signed to the Texans.
Oh wow.
Ooh.
Whoa.
He's gonna have to get off his couch.
So,
we're going to lose our emergency COVID quarterback. So
breaking news here on the Sports Cube podcast.
So this is all right. So this is peek behind the curtain. The most times I would say is we'll get a heads up about a roster move, and it'll be like, but the way it works, it's like, look, it's most likely Schefter or Rappaport. Those guys are going to break it, but as soon as they go, we go. So we have stuff ready to go.
Yep.
There's times like this where the agent puts it out there, and it's now I've got to go check in with PR to be like,
yep.
Are we announcing this? What's the deal? Like,
okay.
So
anyway, since you have to go deal with that, we'll let you go, but certainly, thank you very much for your time, and honestly,
Sure.
to spend a lot of your time, especially during the bye week, whenever you could be resting with the fam. By the way, your fam is incredible.
Appreciate that very much. So
can't wait to meet them. Hopefully, but thank you so much. I know for me and for Kyle, my broadcasting director, from Brandon Eli, thank you.
Oh yeah, we definitely appreciate it.
Immensely, thank you. And we're going to promote the heck out of this. Grow. So thank you so much for your time, Chris. Thank you for all the insider, all the tips. That goes a long way with me, and it's for me more personal. But so thank you so much, Chris.
You want to do like a custom outro here for the Sports Cube podcast?
I would say I'll just close with this. I think you mentioned shooting your shot. It's what you do. I mean, most, especially look in my world, my job is asking athletes to spend their time for interviews, and it's kind of almost like understood, like in the media business. Like, look, if another station, podcast, whatever invites you on, it's kind of like you're, in some ways you're repaying the favor more than anything else. But it's like I've been in the industry full time for 17 seasons. It's there's a lot that's changed. I always do think about if I were to start over and be your guys' age, what difference, what would I do differently? And there certainly are things that I would. And I think one of the things is just the fact that what you guys are doing. Like I went to Drexel University in Philly, and I was the sports editor for the school newspaper, but like I didn't do podcasts weren't a thing. It was radio, but I wasn't really involved with the radio station. I did a bunch of internships, which were certainly helpful, but I definitely wish if I knew I was going to go more into on air. And I think just being a journalist, you can look at shows like Around the Horn, Pardon the Interruption. You go before that really with the sports reporters. Those were like the first shows that put newspaper reporters that typically were writers in front of a camera. And that's not really, we're not handsome enough, we're not good looking enough, or, not the most well-spoken in front of the camera, but it's almost like that's part of the job now, as everyone's doing, especially when it's as easy as Zoom, as everyone's jumping online. get on camera. It's just really important to get that experience and to listen and learn and go back and realize, okay, I asked this question a certain way. Would I ask it differently? I rambled on this point for too long. How can I condense that? There's, there's so many things. Even, people, I always get the question to like, where would you want to be in like a 5 years type thing? And it's like, I always will usually say just better at what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. So it's really, I think just my last thing here before I leave is just learn the foundations, learn the basics, and just build upon it. Because it's tough because you got to be able to provide quick, witty commentary on social media. You got to be able to provide thoughtful, insightful analysis because fans are smarter just because of you can watch every game and you can watch coaches tape of football games and things of every sport now pretty much. So it's just a much, much different industry. It's like, that the story about Josh McCown is probably on 100 websites already. It's like, it's just that quick and crazy. So, I guess I'll just leave you with that little bit there.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Chris, again for your time. Greatly appreciate it. I do not take it lightly one bit. So we'll just chat. We'll chat sometime soon in the future.
Sounds good, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I hope we can do it again.
Yes, for sure.
Definitely will. Eli, Branton, guys, pleasure meeting you guys. Kyler, we'll talk to you soon, brother. Okay.
Yep.
Take care, guys.
Yep. See you.
You too.